Honorable Men Discord, validation, the force behind human behavior. Let's talk about it. Let's be clear. This is not an episode to speak on whether or not validation is good or bad. It's just to point out that what some may not know is an obvious, and that it fuels us. Yes, validation fuels us. And if I don't pronounce that good, it's because, my West Indian background. Forgive me. I am who I am. But it's what gets us going. And the reason why I decided to do an episode on validation is because many of us feel as though we stand on our own, that what we do is original, or how we act is not based on what others influenced us to do, right? Some of us would like to believe that we're leaders when in fact we are followers. And this is just to point that out to those people who may not have realized that they are motivated by others. Now, again, this is not to say whether or not validation is good or bad, because it's just one of those things that is a part of being a human, right? Being a human, you are most likely going to be affected by validation, whether it's good or it's bad. Now, everyone's story is different, but this is just to, point out some of the things that happens when validation is at the forefront of how we conduct ourselves. But before I get into that, as always, I have some stuff queued up that I want to play, and we'll start with this woman. Her channel is Ebony Harris MA. So I'm gonna credit Ebony Harris MA for this video. Let's get into it.
I need someone to validate me. When I'm struggling, when I'm having a hard time, I need someone to validate me. But how do you validate yourself? Most people that I know that seek validation from other people beat themselves up. They're highly critical of themselves. When they have a belief or a thought, they're looking for someone else to confirm it for them versus just them believing in themselves and just them saying, I know this is how I feel. I know this is what's going on, and I can just live with that. They're seeking other people. I need some.
Okay, I'll continue to the next one. I don't really have anything to say on that.
People are online looking for validation, and they're bringing their problems online, and they're not giving any kind of solutions. They're giving no type of solutions, man. So I gotta tell y'all, man, watch who you're listening to. If they're putting out whatever, but there's no solution, so what are we doing to fix this? Right? Like I told you, I'm going overseas, right? I got to make sure I'm not like people or online.
I'm going to play him again because this is interesting. He's talking about people are going online, but they're not giving solutions, right? And if you notice when he's speaking, it sounds like he's bothered by the fact that they're not giving solutions. So he sounds like he himself is looking for validation. And it's almost a contradiction. And if you disagree with what I'm saying, by all means, I'll see you in the comments. He's saying they're not giving solutions, but he goes on to say he's moving, right? He himself is not explaining why he's moving. He's not explaining the benefits of moving. So he's very much leaving it on the table like the people he's mentioning. But let's listen to this again.
Validation, and they're bringing their problems online, and they're not giving any kind of solutions. They're giving no type of solutions, man. So I gotta tell y'all, man, watch who you're listening to. If they're putting out whatever, but there's no solution, so what are we doing to fix this? Right? Like I told you, I'm going overseas.
So he says, what are we doing to fix this? Like I told you, I'm going overseas. So is he inadvertently saying that the solution to the issues is to go overseas? Is that what he's saying? Because he's not saying it clearly. He's not saying it. He's not saying it directly. He's just saying he's going overseas. So is that a solution, or is that running? Or is running a form of a solution? He himself is not giving a solution. First of all, if there's issues, leaving is somewhat of a solution, I guess, depending on your circumstance. But it's not a solution for everyone because he's going overseas. He has the finances to go overseas, or he has family overseas. Not everyone could do that. But it was interesting. I put this up not to criticize what he had to say, but it just, just from listening to what he has to say, it's kind of a contradiction because he said people go online with their problems. Now, he hasn't expressed an issue or a problem that he's having, but he seems frustrated with the fact that people are going online and not giving solutions. I could only assume he's going online and looked for solutions and he hasn't received solutions. So he's bothered by that. But again, this ties into the whole reason why I did this episode on validation. Black people, we've constantly looked for validation, right? It's been historically shown, but I'm not going to fault black people for that because, again, we've done over 200 years as slaves, all we've known is to get direction from someone. And I know I've discussed this before on older videos, maybe some of the videos that I posted during February in light of Black History Month. But in terms of black people, which I generally choose to talk to black people. Why? Because black people, we are struggling to get out of a condition of ignorance. And this is why I speak to black people. Not because I'm against other races, but because I'm concentrating on black people. And there should be nothing wrong with that. Especially when I see a problem. And as he mentioned, I try to come up with solutions or encourage solutions or encourage steps to reach a resolution, right? That's the nature of this channel. I discuss topics not just for the sake of discussing topics and not just for the sake of having a podcast, but the grand scheme of things is I want to see improvement within the black community. But without digressing, this gentleman seems a little bit annoyed by the fact that there's been certain channels he's reached out to looking for solutions, and I guess he didn't find a solution from any particular channel or person that has a channel, and so his thing is I'm moving, but he's being very vague about whatever has been going on in his life. But again, that ties into this title, validation. We, being that we come from generations of being owned and then eventually quote unquote given freedom, but then we were segregated, we were constantly looking for validation. As slaves, we were looking for validation on whether or not we were a good worker, whether or not we were worthy of being inside the house as opposed to being outside in the field. We were constantly under the condition of needing validation. And yes, I'm getting deep with this, and this is all off the cuff. I don't have this written down. But consider this. Over 200 years of slavery, we were constantly looking for validation as to whether or not we were strong enough to do the job. So when we're on the auction block, it's am I strong enough to be selected? Or do I look too weak? Am I light enough to be worthy enough to go inside the house, to work inside the house, or to get favorable positions where I'm not breaking my back picking cotton, right? Do I sell my brother out enough to be able to be in the house, to have favor over my brother? And I'm just talking about black men who were chosen to live in the house and were giving, I guess, butler positions because they were also, for lack of a term, the snitch of all the dealings that were taking place outside the house in the fields. So if there was ever thoughts of an uprise in the fields, you'd have that, what they would call the house Negro that would inform the master of whatever those in the field were thinking about doing, right? So again, validation is within the fabric of what black people do, right? it's a human thing also, but I just want to concentrate on what black people do for now, right? Um, so we under that level of validation, right? Then you wonder years, centuries later, you wonder why we're still looking for validation, right? And if you notice in my thumbnail, I just found a random person with tattoos on their face, right? And for the for the purpose of this video, I'm just gonna say that that image is to represent gang culture, right? Now, I don't know whether or not this person's in a gang. I don't know. Maybe they're part of a tribe, right? But for the purpose of this episode, we're gonna say that represents gang culture. Gang culture, regardless of those involved in the gang or not, stems from validation, the need for validation, the need for acceptance. Yes, there's a need, as I mentioned previously on other episodes, there's a need for protection. Because some people, depending on where you live, you join the gang because it's either you can't beat them, so you join them. That's an old saying. Can't beat them, so you join them. So you join the gang because it's either you join them or you become the target on a daily basis. Every time you walk in home, it's like, I don't want to have to deal with having to fight 10, 15 guys. I'm just going to join the gang. This way, I'm on the side of beating people up as opposed to getting beat up, right? So we look for validation in gangs. We look for identity through those gangs, right? Some of us, that are taking part of gang culture, street culture, whether you're selling dope on the streets or you're in a gang, you may think you're a leader or an individual, but you're not. You're looking for validation. You look for validation by the company you keep. You're looking for validation by the money you make, because you make money and it's going to validate you as a man, because now you could drive around that neighborhood in that nice car and the girls notice you more, whereas they didn't notice you when you didn't have the money. When you didn't have the money, they weren't paying attention to you. Their eyes were on the cars passing by and who was driving it. Same thing applied for like the club life. The girls that's standing online, they're not paying attention to the guys that's online with them. And yes, there's going to be a few scenarios where there are girls paying attention to the guys online. But for the most part, they're looking at the cars driving by. Who's pulling up in what car? Who's parking out front? Right? Who's stepping out of the car? Who's skipping the line? In relationships, women look for validation. They look for whether or not their man acknowledges when they get their nails done, how their hair looks, their outfit. Again, this episode is not to say that validation is wrong or it's good. I think it's a combination of both, and depending on the scenario and case, depending on how it's applied. All right. Instagram, which I don't even know how long Instagram has been around for, but Instagram perpetuated that need for validation. If you post a picture and you don't get the likes that you're looking for, you don't feel like you're somebody. You feel like you're irrelevant. There were a lot of cases because of Instagram that of people or young adults or young children unaliving themselves because they didn't feel like they were seen or that they had any value being on this earth because of their presence on Instagram. Now, there was bullying and stuff like that involved also, but the point I'm trying to make is that validation in all of us matters. We can deny it, but then that we're just lying to ourselves. All right. Let me go into another clip that I have queued up. And this is courtesy of Dr. Tracy Marks. Let's get into it.
You have to be able to affirm yourself internally. Needing other people to affirm you makes you too vulnerable and dependent on others for validation. Other people have their own needs, and they can't always lift you up and rescue you from your negative thoughts about yourself. This is not to say that external validation isn't good. Compliments and recognition are great, and they feel great, but they can't be required for you to feel whole and complete. You have to be able to affirm.
And Dr. Tracy Marks made a great point. So there's nothing wrong with external validation, but that can't be the end all be all for your existence. All right. And this topic, yes, I'm pointing out the fact that I believe it's the force behind human behavior, but I have to also admit for myself, validation. When I was younger, I was looking for validation, as we all are, going through the adolescence phase. We can say, "Oh, I wasn't looking for validation," but many of the things that we did, what we wore, was from validation. All right. I went from wearing non-name brand shoes and sneakers to when I was finally able to work, I started trying to buy the stuff that I saw the drug dealers on the block wearing. You know, it was hard to even try to keep up with them, which I never was able to keep up with them because they would have a new sneaker every time it dropped. They would have a sneaker, but I started to buy the Jordans that I always desired, you know, and things of that nature. And I can say it was something that I just wanted to get, but it was influenced by the fact that I saw other people around my age, or if not older, wearing Jordans, right? Now, I was absolutely a Jordan fan, so I would have bought Jordan sneakers anyway because I was a fan of Jordan and the way he played on court. But the point I'm trying to make is a lot of the stuff that I did when I was younger was because just looking for validation. You know, if you got used to be made fun of for not having a certain type of clothing, designer brand, when you finally get your hands on money because you're working, you're most likely going to buy the brands that you see other people wearing because you don't want to be made fun of. So you say to yourself, okay, now I could afford, you know, fill in the blanks X brand. So I'm going to buy it and wear it because no one's going to make fun of me for wearing that because that's what they're wearing, right? I mean, you see it all over the place. Perfect example. And I'm just going to just target fashion for now because fashion is something that I know we could all identify with. And we can say that, you know, some of our fashion choices, we make it because we're free thinkers and I don't do it because of what other people think about me wearing it, but we're lying to ourselves. When Nike dropped the Panda sneakers, this black and white sneaker, let me see if I can find, whilst I have everyone's attention, let me look at this Nike Panda. And I don't even think that's the actual name of it. Panda, oh, okay, Panda Dunks. These. Right? I could promise you, and I'm talking about New York, right? Because I don't know about any other place. I could promise you when these sneakers dropped, I just about seen it on everyone, including grandparents. I've seen old women wearing these sneakers. You know, the old women that still want to look like they're young. I saw them wearing these sneakers. And the truth of the matter is looking for validation. How many people that own these sneakers bought these sneakers because they just saw them on the rack and said, you know what, I like those. As opposed to those that bought these sneakers because they saw other people wearing it. And because that was the thing of fashion. We could chalk it up to fashion, but fashion is a perfect example of the need of validation. Because a lot of the things that we buy fashion wise is because of validation. You know, there isn't a YN around that doesn't own a Montclair jacket. And they could say, oh, I wear it because it keeps me warm. Did you buy it because it keeps you warm, or did you buy it because you saw other people in rap videos or in your neighborhood wearing it, and so you went and bought the same thing? Validation. Now, as I said before, this is not to point out whether or not validation is wrong or right. It's just to identify the fact that it is a force in our everyday behavior. All right, the cars we buy. You know, if your neighbor is driving a certain vehicle, you tend to try to purchase a vehicle on that level, depending on the neighborhood that you live in, right? There's people who they live in high-end neighborhoods and their neighbors are driving Mercedes and BMWs. And if you move to that neighborhood and you're driving a Honda or a Toyota, you start feeling like, oh, I make enough money to afford something better. Let me change my car. There's some of us that do things like that. So it just proves the point that validation is the force behind human behavior. At the end of the day, I think the best thing that we could all do is, in order to stay ahead of the fact that validation does exist in our lives, is to make sure that no matter what it is that we do, we can look ourselves in the mirror and say, I made the decision to do that with all our choices. Even when it comes in terms of fashion, business decisions. Now, if you're influenced by someone who's a professional in terms of business now, if you're looking for validation from someone you look up to in business, I don't see anything wrong with that. But when you are in need of validation from others and you put that if you put that on a pedestal over your own validation about yourself, that's the only time I think it's a bit of an issue. But again, the purpose of this episode wasn't to point out whether or not validation is a bad thing or a good thing, because I think it's a combination of both depending on the circumstance. It was just to open up the floor, so to speak, to just acknowledging just how much of it affects us in our day-to-day lives. And that's it. Anyone have anything that they would like to express about validation in the comments? I'll be there as always. And continue to support the channel, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.